Hello and welcome. We are here with the channel Marxbadi today. Today we have with us Professor Edgar Ish. He was the former Minister of Environment of Ecuador and the Director of Postgraduate Studies at the Technical University of Cotopaxi. He is also used to have researches and on various Ecuadorian and international organizations. Especially, what should we mention here? There are some sectors where he used to have special interest. Those are social issues, environmental issues, education, children's rights, gender, especially water resources and political ecology. Professor Edgar, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So
Thank you for
we are going to start something about on what is happening on Ecuador and in the larger context what is happening in the Latin American states. I should start with something what we got about your interest, the political ecology, social issues, environmental issues, how these issues are really relevant with today's Ecuador state or the Latin American stages, how these things are very much related.
There are a natural link because what happened with the nature, what happened with the environment, is an important issue for communities, for the populations. And what happened with the nature has influence in the daily life of the people. So when we are talking about ecological, political ecological, we are talking about of resources, who uses the resources, who are the beneficiaries, and who lost power, who lost resources. In Ecuador and in Latin America in general, today we are in front to the great powers who take the natural resources for them. Powers like the transnational companies, the international governments, especially United States, Canada, in the case of mining, for example, and in order also to defend the seeds and the alimentary condition for the population. So the natural conditions and the social conditions at last are the same.
I would like to introduce a book. I think people who is going to watch the video will see the book. I have already told you about the book. This is a book what we used to have read at the last phase of our school days. The book starts with something with Ecuador, and it is mentioned how CIA and the IMF, Washington, these forces are engaged in Latin American states to control over it. If you can put some light on it, how these things, this IMF, this CIA, these people are engaged and why they are so much interested in Latin America.
Yeah, Latin America for United States is his backstage. Always they say that. Always they say Latin America is for Americans. And they say Americans are not Americans, United States, not the continent. The name of the continent is for one country for they. So Latin American don't exist actually. In some official documents of the United States, they say, for example, the Mexican countries. They don't say the name of the countries. They are thinking Mexico is all, and we don't exist. In other documents, they express John Keenan. John Keenan was an important chief of the diplomatic section of the United States. He said, he wrote, United States must defend his resources. If these resources are in other countries, it's not important. This is ours, not you. It's my resources, but it's in your country. Yeah. So they made direct interventions. The state coup is one usual way. And after a state coup, the support to the fascist regimes, Pinochet in Chile, Videla in Argentina, Brazil, but in other moments, they take the decision of invade, send the army of the United States against one country. Nicaragua, Panama, Cuba, before the revolution, they suffered it. But this book is really interesting because John Perkins, in his Confessions, he talked about how the domination added the killing to the leaders of the country. Not the revolutionary leaders. For example, in Ecuador, Roldós, the former president Roldós, Jaime Roldós, he was not a leftist. He was a nationalist.
Still, he was under the attack.
He was killed. And the other question, how the external death is a system of domination. How first is the external death, and then are the conditions to pay. And the conditions are a lot of politics. In general, in Ecuador, for example, the external debt was the way to impose the neoliberalism politics. Yeah, and you can understand this in this book. His confessions are really absolutely clear in this sense.
I must move to the next part. As you mentioned, the system of domination. With this word, I would like to know that how the people's struggle is working against this system of domination, how the Latin American people are fighting, or at least try to fight out this domination.
There is a long struggle in every country with differences, but in the same time with similitudes. But it's a long time against the enterprises who destroy the environment or who enslave the people in every country, against the international United States policy and so on. This struggle today has a new conditions, because the people, and the young especially, is looking for a new options. And this have expressions so diverse. For example, in electoral processes, the leftists are winning the elections. Colombia is very important in that sense. It's the first time with a government with nationalist and leftist positions. First time. In a country that the rightists and fascists have strong. This is one situation. And you have different actions of these governments. It's not the same. Yeah? Of course, there are the other branch, the direct struggle, the struggle in the streets, the struggle against some politics, but in favor of the contrary. In Andean region, the indigenous people has a very big importance in this sense, because they are not just defend his traditional way of living. They are sustain a new positions, change in the constitutional, legal, and so on. And the indigenous have a very good link with leftist organization. In some cases, like Ecuador, the indigenous has his own political party, but they say we are one of the leftist parties, and sometimes have a confluence, a link and accords with other leftist party. Yeah. Why it is possible? Because in the Andean region, the indigenous has the thinking of the summa causai. This is Quechua word. The translation is more or less good living. Yeah, good living between the humans and good living the humans with the nature. Yeah, I cannot have a good living if my community has no good living. It's a plural concept. Yeah, and when
So it's like something instead of being I, it's about we.
yeah, it's about we. It's some translators said maybe it's better if we said is the life with plenitude, total life, yeah, the good life, but is the community, is not for one person. This is really important to say because some texts they put like is a personal condition, and this is useful for the right wing. When you take the summa causai, the traditional way of living, and you express this is what the leftists are proposing, like a new war is very similar, the union is possible. Yeah. For the number, for the organization, for the force of the struggle. In the Andean region, there are no revolution without the indigenous people. This is completely clear. But the indigenous people is one force. You have
Other forces too.
yeah, the youth organization, the women organization are very strong today. The workers in a process of growing, the level of syndicalization, the percent of workers in a union are very small. Legally, it's very small. Today is a moment to growing, to be biggest. But the workers are in all the struggles too. Peasants, because the traditional peasant is in a struggle against the great companies of the agricultural for exportation, for export, and they are fighting for water, for land, for seeds, for the conditions to produce. So there are a lot of sectors, a lot of reason of struggle, but the good news is these people is finding, is a process, is finding the union, the necessity of union. And you can see this in the force of the struggle. The indigenous and people's movements are strong in that part of the world. But it's different with Brazil, for example, or with Chile. It's different. Mexico is another case, it's different. They have a nationalist government with strong contradictions with the imperialism, but the president of Mexico say, I am not leftist, I am democratic. Yeah, and this is true. This is true. For the imperialism, this is bad. The Americans don't want nationalists and democratic government.
Whenever whoever is going to come against their interest, they will brand them as leftist and something like that.
Yeah. Continue. Of course, the worst case is Cuba and the long blockade against Cuba, criminal situation. And the blockade to Venezuela is another hard case. Today, Venezuela is struggling not just against the blockade, is a struggle against the national corruption in the government. The good is that the president is against these corrupt people inside the government, but this is a very big problem for Venezuela. But the imperialists banned all democratic expression, They want just governments that say yes to his owner, like slaves of the imperialism, not with his own thinking.
They just want someone who is going to say yes or no, whatever they say. They just want someone in power in those states.
Yeah. Every day, the imperialists say what the countries must do, what must think every day. The ambassadors, for example, are permanent interventions on the national politics. Yeah? This is not diplomatic. This is imposition. Yeah? And again, the external debt is a system that they use for this. The external debt is not yeah.
Well, this is exactly what you are saying now. This system of being in debt is really a problem, a big challenge.
External debt has nothing to do with solidarity, help for development. No, it's a system to destroy the national conditions. For example, in Ecuador, no external debt. We had a big production of wheat in the 60s. Yeah? Our country didn't import wheat. And United States bring wheat free. And they give to the people what the people had. Destroy the peasant production. When we don't have wheat in our countryside, we put prices for the grain. Yeah. This is not solidarity.
This is business. This is business. Exactly.
Without a moral condition, it's just business, as the mafia said.
You heard that we have talk about the political situation of the Latin American subcontinent. This is not an end where we stop. It's only the first part of our conversation. In the next part, we are going to talk about the particular situation of the Ecuador as well as what is happening in India, our country. I hope we will all have a deeper introspect about that part too. Hope you will enjoy that.